It's a re-baselining of the planet, and somewhere on this solid state drive is my money.
To be honest with you, there are some people who have become experts at making their problems other people's responsibility.
We need to actually slow down quite considerably and give the opportunity to talk to people and use one of the best tools that we actually have, which is our voice.
In the room, 52 Jokers Wild.
Should be a pin somewhere.
You lost your knitting again,
I have. Lost my knitting again. There we go. And then we should be able to go full screen. So it's just that one. There we go. Oh, just need to get rid of me and Garvin. Don't want those two guys in there. They're just a nuisance.
They're the reason for the show, so they need to be in here.
Oh, well, we've got cameras. We're using cameras, so that's what we're doing. So I might just...
Well, you should have let me know. I would have got mine too.
Oh, well. Next time. We're going to have a next time. So, all right, let's we'll take it from here. So, hello again. It's Friday, and we have another podcast. Last week, we were saying, thank God it's Friday. But we're really glad that it's this Friday, because we have a special guest who is Lori Gatsi-Barnett. We're not going to tell you anything about her, but Laurie will at some point when we give her a chance to, as long as Garvin doesn't creep in there beforehand and say something and stop us all from talking. Welcome to the show, Laurie. How are you? How's it going? You've had a few problems this morning that we've noticed as well. Just the electricity sort of jumping out and freezing you and all that sort of stuff.
Well, you know what? I'm actually discovering that the word developing is not only for other regions of the world. It happens here too. So we're having power cuts and shortages today. Miracles, right? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, now the strange thing is, you know, we had that feeling, you know, you power cut. In 30 seconds, we're back to the Stone Age. We're going.
Yes.
We've lost communications. Everything stops working. My kids are saying, the TV's gone off. I'm going to move. I'm going to make some tea. I go, no, that doesn't work either. You know, they're moving from electrical device, thinking, no, that stopped, but this must work. I know. The common denominator is the power is off. We're back to the Stone Age. George talked about this last week to mention that most of us don't know how to reinvent the wheel. We might have a book. If we get thrown back to the Stone Age by just the power going off, our broadband's gone off, the logistics stops, the trucks stop moving, people are got their money, their Bitcoin wallet's gone. You know, we're going, that's an interesting one. If your money is in Bitcoin, the power goes off. I think it's a re-baselining of the planet in terms of billionaires are now, I have this computer, somewhere on this solid state drive is my money. You know, can I spend this? Can I buy some food? No, the answer is no. You can't. You can't even barter. So when the power goes off, are we disempowered?
I agree with that totally, because I was sitting here dumbfounded thinking, wait a minute, there something I pressed? And then I realized, you know what? It's got nothing to do with me, because everything's just died, literally. So I'm left here hopeless. And like you so rightfully said, it feels like back in the Stone Ages. I probably won't remember anyone else's number except my own. So if I was in a crisis, can you imagine? I can only call myself and I'm stuck. So this is hopeless. You're so right. Power.
Embrace the power.
That's the interesting thing, because I remember as kids knowing loads and loads of people's numbers that I could actually ring, because I knew everybody's telephone number. But now I don't even know my wife's number. I don't even know my kid's number, because they all come up with their names. This is Tim. This is Connor. This will soon be Oshin's, the youngest, who's only 2 years old. But my number I can remember. Nobody else's I can remember, because we've lost that capacity to store the information in our own brains.
The only number you don't ring, George, is That's yourself. It. And the strange thing is, if you ring that number and you get through to you, we're already in trouble. Absolutely. We're getting through to that multiverse. Yes.
Where are you now?
Well,
what are you doing?
Roadside assistance by self.
Now, there, actually just reminded me, my car broke down. I was bringing my daughter to school, or no, the other way around. I was collecting her from school there a number of weeks back, and the car power stopped. And I got out of I didn't know. I got out of the car. I mentioned this in one of our podcasts. I went to collect her, and I went back to the car, and the battery was dead. Now, I took my phone out to ring the AA, and that was dead. I thought I was in a vortex. I hear my phone battery's dead, my car battery is dead. I can't get home. The panic set in. George loves this. I go straight to panic mode. It's only a battery. You're not in a third world country. You're in a car park of a nice school in the middle of Kilkenny and in the sunny southeast of Ireland. What's the problem? My mobile phone. I'm powerless. Oh, my car, I can't get from it. You can get another car. The AA will give you one. Well, borrow someone's phone. But the panic, we're straight to, well, not everybody. I'm sure there's different personalities out there, but I'm straight to panic mode because I'm disempowered. I haven't got my phone. That's who I am. That connects me to the control. That helps me control my environment. My car, men, we like to be able to get from A to B. It's a big car, a small car. It's an extension of our personalities. If you just took my car away, I took my phone away, again, I'm back to the Stone Age. I'm Fred Flintstone. I'm disempowered. I'm looking out for dinosaurs. So how do we re-empower ourselves, in this day and age?
Get tools.
Get tools.
Tools.
Get a better car.
Well, hey, I can testify to that. There are more women who use more tools than men. I'm sorry to say, there are a lot of women.
That's my wife.
Learns how to do everything. And half the time, I think we're putting some of you out of work. And it's funny you said about the cars, right? How many men actually use a car as an avatar, for example? Here we are thinking, as everybody else, it's just a car. And then you have these really angry drivers who are out on the road. Is it because their car is bigger? And sometimes, as the other person looking from, whatever car size you have, it's always looking at them and thinking, you know what, you probably are not that great and you're compensating for it with the car. So that's a fair notion. Some people actually don't do that.
You're terrible now. I know what you're talking about. You know what you're talking about. I'm not even going to go there how big and small my car is and whether it's an extension of my personality or not. It's a nice car. It's a sleek car. It's a powerful car. It's a cheap car. I don't know. That's where I'm starting to fall back in now. But I do believe I'm a big 6'6" guy, and I'm always complaining about getting into small cars. I don't belong in a small car. Whether it's an extension of my ego or not, it's a functional something. But I keep on wanting to buy. I don't have the money. I can't afford the car I want. No, so the dreamscape car is, I want a G-Wagon. It's a big 7-seater monstrosity. It's nearly a Hummer. It's an Arnold Schwarzenegger car of type. And it is in ego, bred into me. If I have that, I've arrived. I'm here. That's a measure of myself, of success. I don't have it. So therefore, I'm not successful in my mind because I don't have my G-Wagon yet. I don't know how I'm going to get it. But if ever I get it, it's a measure of a distance of from here to success that I think men measure themselves by. And I don't know whether women have a similar car or a similar measure of their own distance.
Let's put a different perspective on it, because I come from a slightly different background where my dad used to go out and fix motorbikes, fix lawnmowers, and he was in his garage doing all kinds of stuff. He would do wood turning, and my aspirations were to do something very similar. So for me, that would be success, is to actually take apart a motorbike and put it back together again and see if I can use it. My son has now just done that. He's now customized his own motorbike from, I got a 1978 Kawasaki, and he has now totally customized it. It was at a shop recently to just have the final tuning in Canada to make sure it was roadworthy. And half the people coming in wanting to buy it off him. He says, no, I want to use it. So he's already thinking, I could do something else. But that's his engineering. He's done engineering, and he wants to do those sort of things. And I've been wanting to do that for years and years. And I remember all the old cars that we used to have. I used to go out and fix them and do all sorts of things, bits and pieces. My son's doing something with it. But we're now left with this car that, if the computer doesn't work inside it, you can't do anything with it. The MOTs now, if the computer light's saying it's not working properly, you need to take it to the mechanic as quickly as possible. It actually also goes...
It's not working properly. You can't get it to the mechanic.
Half the time it's a fault with...
I love the chicken and egg.
Half the fault is the light just comes on. You go over a bump and the light comes on. There's an electronic. It's the problems that you were having earlier on with electricity. The signal, we've put diagnostics on the car, and it's saying the car's perfectly right. There's a warning sign. You can't use this car. but everything's fixed. We don't know where to go and find it to solve the problems, and that's one of the things with the technology. Unless you've got the big computer, which is what Garvin's talking with his big car. Oh, you've got to have the big computer that can tell you what it can do because it's an AI inside it and it knows everything. Humans don't know anything.
A man. Actually, no, as Laurie says, you don't need a man for that. You probably now need a woman for that because STEM and all this, women in tech. We need more women engineers. We need more women. Actually, there's a shortage of engineers on the software side, the hardware side, and a shortage of mechanical engineers and garages and things. People aren't going into the trades anymore. And we need, I'm sure everywhere on the planet, we need more men and women, maybe, and predominantly more women if we want to address this gender bias thing. In tech, in STEM, in mechanics, and you said it, my wife has invested in a toolbox. I don't have one. I've got masking tape. I'm Homer Simpson. If masking tape does not solve the problem, you're talking to the wrong person. Because I couldn't even do it if I wanted it because I don't have a screwdriver and I don't have the tools. And I'm sticking to that because I don't. I talked to my friend there last week. If I had that solves one half the equation. Then, if I had the knowledge, I might actually be able to solve the problem. But in my head, I'm going, it's not my problem. It's someone else's problem. If I don't have the tools and I don't know how to do it, I've got a great excuse. But if I have both, then I might end up having to do it. Whereas I'd rather be walking the dog, having cappuccinos, planning world domination, not mending a fence or painting the back room. It's what some people see that as Zen. Actually, George, you just said it. I heard Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. That you were finding mindfulness in putting it together and taking apart a machine. But while you were talking, I was having a nightmare going, I don't want parts. I don't want to put them back together again. Actually, I like a Harley Davidson. I'd love to buy one and stick it on the wall. I'm not thinking about driving it. But it's art, it's mechanics, it's a job to some, it's pleasure to others. And there's a bunch in between. But for me, it's alien. It's work. I don't want that work. I want my passion to be something else. And I don't know what that is yet. Well, I have a few ideas, but I need to. Now, I'm talking to myself over here. Laurie, get back in the game. You've got to fight your way in. I was just waiting for a second
there because you
got me. You cannot wait.
You got me on the gender bias thing because I was thinking about that. And you know what?
There you go. We got the hook.
Yes, we do. And I think the thing is, whether it's space aviation or it's engineering as a subject or it's even being a mechanic, I think for so long, let's face it, guys, you've had the glass ceiling and you've kind of sat on it for so long. And now we're just trying to say, you know what? We no longer just want to look at the glass ceiling. We want to smash the glass ceiling and actually have ownership of this. Because let's face it, let's be honest. When it comes to the smaller, intricate parts, and unfortunately for you, I'm one of those women whose father said to me, before you own a car, you need to know what a car can do. So he opened up the front of the car, the hood of the car, and had me look at it. Because he said, there's no point taking the car to the mechanic when you don't know where the water is, you don't know where the oil is, and you don't know where the basic things are. You don't even know what a head gasket is, let alone what all of those things.
That's a terrible word. That's a curse word. You hear the word head gasket, and you just know it's ka-ching, ka-ching. Actually, we got that. You just came. We had a show, I don't know, many shows back, and my wife, actually, it comes back to this little light on the dashboard stuff. The red light was on for about a month. I was going, surely there were some warning signs. And she said, there was a light on. But I started to ignore it after a while. I said, no, that's, when you see a red light, it's not saying pay it, like get back to it. It's saying stop. Red is for stop. Do something about it. Find out what it is and fix it. It's not an orange one. It's not a flashing one that goes away. It's a red light on a dashboard. It means, it's meant to frighten the holy bejesus out of you. It's meant to say, do something, fix something. Well, she ignored it for about a month, and then now we're going to get to this head gasket language. It was, there's no oil in your engine, and you need to top it up or something else. And the car just stopped, and smoke came from the front of the car, and the AA man came along and just laughed. He said, you just want to there's nothing I can do here. It's dead. That car is expired. It's an ex-car. Now, you can get, the word I'm going to use is head gasket, and that means $2,000 plus grand, $5,000, keep going. The figure I'm going to come up with is worth more than the car. And it's not an insurance thing. It's actually, here's some petrol on a match. Just put it in there and walk away.
I agree with that.
That car is dead.
Absolutely agree with that. And then here's the part that I don't like. So you show up to the mechanics and you're a woman, right? And you show up and you say, well, the light is going off. It's on the dashboard, like you so rightfully said. And what happens? All I want you to do is tell me about the light. But what happens is the mechanic, most men, especially when you're a woman, just keep the price going up. So we go from just the light that you need to figure out, give me a diagnostic, to my wheel alignment is off, to now you've got something wrong with your drive shaft. Next is let's have a look at your transmission and gearbox. I just showed up for the light.
Yeah.
And most of the time as women.
I wouldn't mind. No, I'm terrible. I'm terrible, George. I was saying there wasn't even a car in the room. So, I mean, that was a whole other sort of conversation you were having. I don't know how that date went in the end. But I mean, that's what was going on. We're doing a little dance with the men. The men that know or claim to know. And sometimes they don't know, but they're more likely men. And they're little older men. And they're only fools and horses, I'm reminded of. And they're ex-car salesmen. And not that there's anything wrong with that if it's a Mercedes or a G-Wagon. But the whole point is there's a mentality that we're afraid when we go there. We don't know them. We don't know what it's going to cost. We don't know what the language and the translation is. We get a fright. I mean, I immediately go, it's broken, it's $5,000. It could be 50 quid. It could be a fuse. But we're at the will of an honest or dishonest person that they either want to screw you for the moment or they're going the long game. The long game means they know you're going to have a car for life. They can become your mechanic. They can have that relationship journey. You might pay, they may always be a little, you're paying a little extra in there the whole time, but they're not screwing you. They know I have you for life. I have got a mechanic. I trust them to screw me a little bit. But I know if I go somewhere else, I'll be fecked. It's you going, you have that game of you're paying for the pain. And the pain is if you don't want to fix it yourself, you know enough of a language, you learn enough of the language that, only have one of them. It broke before I replaced it. Give me some credibility, credit for knowing you're having me on. And that's, actually, as an accountant, same thing. Lawyer, solicitor, accountant. Then they can tell you anything. They can give it a name you never heard of, and the price goes up. And we're afraid. We want to trust people, and that's where it comes back. We're not talking about women or men here anymore. We're just going. It's when you don't know and haven't got the knowledge, and it's going to cost you. You want to be able to trust the person you're talking to, that they don't take advantage of you. That's what we're searching out. People you want to work with that you can trust.
Well, that's where the key comes in. You've just now mentioned if you don't know the knowledge, that's when they can keep putting the price up. And it's the same with solicitors. We were always taught you need to know your game. You need to know what it is legally that's going on so that when the solicitor comes to talk to you, you actually probably know more than they do. And they're just a cog in the wheel as well. They will go and talk about all sorts of things and blind you with their type of science. But if you have knowledge about what it is that you're going to talk about, then they're defenseless as well. And I've known this with other people who have tried to give me massive, great big bills for something. And I went, hang on a second. I've researched the job. I know it doesn't cost anywhere near that. You've just doubled the price and you want me to pay for something that I'm not prepared to pay for. So I think it is important to go out there and learn the knowledge. The art, the Zen and the art of motorcycle mechanics is not about motorcycle mechanics. It's about two characters that are going on a journey. One of them is a Garvin, the other one's a George, technically speaking, because there is one character that's bought an 1,800-pound motorbike that should be able to do everything, the best of German technology, but it needs a little widget that the other guy wants to cut out of a can. And the first guy doesn't want his bike messed up by a little piece of metal from a can that would actually solve all his motorbike problems. So he's prepared to go and sort of lose half his journey and find some expensive BMW outlet to fix his motorbike when it could have been fixed within 5 seconds by a guy that knew about it and wasn't going to charge him anything. So it's about these perceptions of things that are going on. I also want to kind of return to something because I know I've gone to speak to people with my wife. The person's actually called my wife and asked her to go along to talk, and I've gone with her. And quite often it's been a man. So I'm nearly 6 foot, my wife's 5 foot, and the fellow will be somewhere in the middle. He starts talking to me. And I've actually said a few times, my wife's the one that called you. You need to be talking to her, not me, just because I'm standing there. I'm not the customer. My wife is, and she's intelligent enough to know exactly what you're talking about. Give her the respect she deserves because she's the one that's the client. And if she doesn't like what you're saying, she's the one that's going to walk away and not pay you. So that's something else that I think is quite important because a lot of these things are about life and how the experiences of life that we have, and really about how we treat each other and how we treat people in general and how we look at the world around us. And quite often, we've discussed this in the past, it's fears that normally hold us back. It's the fears that have stopped us from achieving certain things, or even trying to fix something that we think is going to cost us a lot of money. And when we do go to fix it, we suddenly kind of go, oh, is that all it was going to cost? I could have done that ages ago if I realized it was only going to cost me that bit.
I'm going to let Laurie back in because I'm remembering the stem. And actually, now the weird thing is we've just gone off our little rant and we're saying, if you were doing the reset with women, would that include they're more honest than these men? The job is motor mechanic. The job is car salesperson. The job is, but does the same associations also go with the job functionality? Will they then be going, I walk in and there's a lovely girl mechanic there behind, me car is broken, and she starts giving me your widget and your didgeridoo are gone on for a little walk now. Oh, that's like a ching ka-ching. So they can functionally have the skill set. They can run the showroom. They can run the mechanic outlet. But are they going to then take on the rest of the guys of, you wear the suit of the job that's there, or is it going to be a nicer flowers and cappuccinos in the corner, welcome you in and go, here's the price list, and it's all much more, we won't screw you?
Well, look, to be honest, I think right now when we look at what's happened, especially with COVID, right? We went from all the liberty in the world to restrictions that were absolutely out of everyone's control. And now we're in that mad frenzy of survival. And this is financial survival. So like George so rightfully said, you have to have that decision that you make whenever you're doing business. Is it that you love what you do and you're charging a fair price? Because let's be honest, there's some things we've all paid for. And then 6 weeks down the line, you see the same thing and it costs nothing close to what you paid for. I mean, classic example is game consoles. Anybody who has kids who have game consoles, if you purchase them, let's say Black Friday, by the time you get to Boxing Day, by the time you get to New Year's Day and post-New Year's Day, you could kick yourself for how much you paid before it was Christmas for purchasing all those things. But could you tell a 10-year-old, I'm sorry, Daddy was waiting for the price to be just right for me to buy it for you and they expect you to open it on Christmas morning? No, of course not. So there's all these things associated with what am I going to charge? What am I going to get for it? But I think the thing for me that gets me is, do you do what you do because you actually love it? Enjoy it. And when you price things, you're pricing them not out of this necessity of survival, but make your margins. Absolutely understand that. Make your profits. Totally agree with that. But when it's to the extreme, I have a problem with that. Because at the end of the day, how do you sleep at night? And what sort of conscience do you have? Well, you don't have one anymore. I don't get that.
The weird now, that's what I really like, because I think myself and George had a little bit of a conversation before you came on, and it was a little bit of that in it. We were talking to others, and it became, I'm delivering quality. I'm doing my job well. I'm well educated, well qualified. I invested in the past to arrive at this moment. And there was a lot of jokes out there and things like that they say, they go to the guy and go, a ship broke down, and they don't know how much it's going to fix it. And everyone keeps on going, it's going to cost this, it's going to take this long, bump, bump, bump. And they give them a different price. And they keep on negotiating the prices up and down. And they go in and pay the people and they can't fix it. Then they go to the specialist and he goes, it's 10,000 quid. And he just hits the thing with a hammer and it works. And they go, right, that took you 4.5 seconds. I'm not paying for that. It's in there. He says, you're not paying for the questions. You're not paying for the amount of time. You're paying for the answer. I knew where to hit it with what tool, got you back working. My price is, you could have spent the next 10 years doing that and got nowhere. We want to bring the answers, not the problems. That's what myself and George are now saying. It's not the price is a functional hour or something. No, it's go to someone else for the functional hour. If you want the functional hour from the brand personality or the you, my time is limited and it's me, not George, or George, not me. If you're picking the who and you're picking the functionality and you're picking the brand persona wrapped around it, the price, as you said, has changed. It's a Rolls Royce, not a Lada. The car will get you from A to B, but you can't pay for the lad of the price for the Rolls Royce. You go because you're going to feel better. You're getting a different experience. You're getting a different journey, a different feeling. You want to be dealing with a limited edition, and therefore, but you can't keep on reverting to the functional and go, I didn't get this. I paid for Butlins, but I wanted Disneyland. It's you have to, join both parts, and that's why I like what you're saying. There's a functionality, there's a trust element that we want to be people to deal with the person going forward. It's no longer what we were stripped down to the functional as I was an accountant, George was an editor. You can buy the accountancy, you can buy the editing. It doesn't matter who the person is. I'm not an accountant anymore. I'm Garvin, and George is not an editor, he's George. There's Garvin and George and Laurie, and if you want to buy into us, if you want to buy into the madness, the mayhem, the story, the journey, then that's now what's for sale. But you can't get that anywhere else unless you've cloned us. You'll get some variant, some version. Well, you're welcome to it. But I think we all have to be us going forward, the story of us, the story of you. We're not the function we were before. We are the person, and that's what we're selling, and that's where we've arrived at.
Well, I suppose I can ask you both, because my thing is, you could be the smartest tool in the toolkit. Okay, we can agree that. Go and have all the PhDs.
I'm definitely a tool in the toolkit, but I'm not going to go into that.
Garvin. But in any case, I think it's about one thing that people miss is you cannot buy experience. Because you've got all these young people and a whole generation that's out there. And what you, Garvin and George, have is experience, of which I kind of need to live a little bit more to acquire what you have. So that by me sitting and having a conversation with you, I think people have cut out the learning element that experience brings, not just the skill. Because like you so rightfully said, it's picking up, if it's a hammer or whatever it is, and knowing exactly where to hit for it to work without taking it apart. Whereas you get these geniuses, he'll take the whole thing apart, put it back together, take longer than it could have taken a person who has experience who just tapped the right spot. So what do you do then when people are so obsessed with the technology and they override experience? You can't put a price on that.
Oh, well, again, the whole point is to put a price on that now, depending, and hopefully 10 grand, not 10 quid. But we're reminded of something we keep on talking about, and half the time I even say the word wrong. I've been calling it the Pareto principle. I think it's the Pareto principle. It's the 80-20 rule. That's a sort of methodology and mindset we've been applying to ourselves. We can't be perfect because all of us there's no such thing as perfection, but the very nature of us, we're imperfect. And it just needs to be good enough. And when we're saying good enough, because of our skill sets and who we are, our good enough is an A. It doesn't need to be 100%. It's still 90%. It's 80%. It works. It does its job for the price you're paying for it. You don't need to. You need to get on to the next thing. We're on a journey. Someone actually commented today that you could fix that picture or you could move that thing. You're going, I didn't even know. I wasn't even aware of it. That was something 2 years ago. We don't even care about it. It has no value. We're too busy trying to build a new universe to worry about. Do we change the colour from green to yellow on a picture in the background? At this stage, it's the big picture. If you're aiming for the big picture and making a difference, you can't get caught up with the little things unless they're on the critical path. That this little, as I said, if that little piece in that, the machine that George was talking about, if that's the linchpin, if the machine doesn't work with this, then that has a massive different value. It might cost 10 cents, but your £1 million machine doesn't work without it. It's on the critical path. You got to do something about it. So we have to get up in the morning. We are the £1 million machine. We got to get it out of bed, and we got to get it on a critical path, and we got to embrace the time that's left. And if we want to make a big difference, we got to play a big game. If we don't want to make a big difference, we just have to turn up, go for a walk with the dogs. Kick the ball for the kids. It's a big difference to them.
Yeah, I think something that's really important that when I started out, and we use the editing and also with the teaching in both those environments, you go in and do your class or you go in and do your edit, then you go and have a tea break or a coffee break. And at the coffee break, you'd be kind of sort of, I've got all these problems, I can't solve them, and what am I going to do? And somebody from the other side of the table says, why don't you just do X, Y, and Z? And you kind of, right. And you go back and that problem would be solved. again, the same sort of situation happened in the classroom. I'm sure everybody else has got similar sort of situations as well. Then it became that you had to work, and you sort of had your tea in your edit suite, or you had your tea almost in the classroom, and you didn't get to meet with your colleagues because their time frames were shifted from your time frame, so you couldn't relate to them the stories that you were experiencing. So those problems just kept building up and building up and building up. And I think that's where the problem is that we're not having discussions in the world that we live. This is why this kind of thing is really, really important, because we're now having an opportunity for about 45 minutes to chat and gain some wisdom from other people about what's going on. Whereas in most people's situations, they're now isolated, or they're going from one meeting where it's not about a discussion, it's about somebody just firing stuff at them and they have to take notes. And now they don't even get a chance to go to the loo or to get a cup of tea to replenish themselves. They're going into the next meeting and the next meeting and the next. And before they know it, they can't remember anything that they were supposed to do during that day because it's just gone past in a flash. Those are the problems that we're having. We need to actually slow down quite considerably and give the opportunity to talk to people and use one of the best tools that we actually have, which is our voice and our mind, I suppose, to chat things through and work things out. And quite often, a lot of problems can be solved very, very quickly just because somebody else has a different perspective. My wife has come home a few times and told me issues that she would have at work. And I'd kind of go, well, why didn't they do this, that? Oh, do you know, nobody thought of that. God, that's brilliant. And you could suddenly see this kind of wrecked person suddenly get lifted up because all of a sudden they've got a solution that nobody in the group thought about because they hadn't got together to chat things through properly. And that's then eased her pressure and eased her stress and strain that she's going through at that particular moment. And it's just a chat for actually half an hour I tend to have. We sit down, have these good long conversations just so that she can unwind. But those are so important. And if we don't get those opportunities to chat things through, we can find ourselves worrying about things and our mental health goes through the roof and our physical health then follows it very quickly because it can't cope with the mental health that's going on. It's going to go, what am I meant to do? What am I meant to do? And I think those are the big issues. You know, I'm sure, Laurie, you've had that same kind of experience in some of the things that you've been working on as well.
I was going to say, just listening to what Garvin was saying about the 80-20 rule, right? There's so many people out there who realistically, 80% of what you have, what you know, what you do is perfect. But then we all get caught up with moonlighting and daydreaming about the 20% that somebody else tells you you're missing. And you spend your whole life chasing after 20%. When the whole entire time you've been sitting there with 80%. Now, how many people have lost out on a lifetime chasing after 20% when you had 80% the whole time? Took on everything in life, became the person you didn't want to be for 20% when 80% was in you all along. So
you gave up what you had to get what you think you needed. And that's it. Happiness is someone else's definition half the time. I mean, I think the big car. Do I want the big car? If the big car was there, great. Am I willing to give up everything for it? No. It'd be a nice reward if it comes with the journey that we're on. But it can't become the defining journey because I know to get that big car and I don't have the right solutions. I've got to work to come up with different alternatives and scenarios to try and arrive at. And the more you're doing that, it's consuming more and more and more time. That time is coming from somewhere. It's coming from family, from friends, it has options. You've got options with time. And that's what Tony Robbins says. You have to have your 5 big things: your health, your wealth, your family, your this, that, and the other. It's not one project, one business, and everything else is left out. Now, other people say you got to work 8 days a week, 25 hours a day. That's how I achieved what it is. I got where I am. And when I get where I am with my millions, then I'll have it all and I can then use the time. But most of us, that's a curve that only a few percentile is on. The rest of us will never get there. We gave up the time, but we didn't get the reward. But we lost the rest. We lost that 80% you're talking about. And therefore, it was a lose-lose, not a win-win. We had to give up what we had to get what we think we can get, and we never got it. So therefore, we lost it all. You know.
I think we miss out on some of what the important things are. It is a combination of all those things. I heard a story yesterday of somebody that was about to retire in the next few months, and they were hoping to go over to Canada to spend some time with their mum, who wasn't really that old in the way things are, and only found out a couple of days ago that she'd passed away. Just so all the the future plans had all just been thrown to the wind. And I think what we tend to forget is that what's most important is what we can do now. And it's don't put off that conversation you were meant to have with someone. Don't put off something else that you thought was important, but maybe could be put off, because the real thing is the human interaction that is needed at that particular moment. And just be aware of what others' needs are around you, so that you can be there to help them through a situation that they're going through. Your work, there's something that I was told before. One thing is endless, the other one is finite. It turns out work is infinite, time is not. And that's the key. We rush around trying to get all this work done. And if I don't get this work done, what am I going to do? And I know my wife's kind of going, God, I gave them 5 months notice and they still haven't sort of advertised my job. And they're talking about me possibly staying beyond the date. I said, love, your time finishes at that date. You have no responsibility beyond that date to them, no loyalties. You've given them an extra 2 months notice. If they can't do their job in that time, that's their problem. Not your problem. You've done your job.
I love that, George. I'm jumping back into the SEP for Laurie. Most of the problems that we thought we had, we use this little acronym. It's SEP. They were someone else's problem. They weren't ours. But we took them on. And it's that not the ability not to say no is what most people's problem is go, no, that's not mine, that's yours, that's someone else's. Don't try and give me your problems. I have my own. I'm trying to get, whether those problems are not, don't mean problems, it could be, this is my workload, that's yours. Don't try and give me yours on top of mine. That's where the stresses and the unrealistic expectations come in. So we said it's an SEP, that's someone else's problem. The quicker we learn that, we take control of our own lives, and we can take that on. We can charge you a price. If you want me, well, that comes on. I have to push something else off for my boss. But, realizing what's yours and what someone else's is a certain, level of empowerment. And you don't have to take on all the problems either, because we give ourselves these things, and most of the time it's self-inflicted. We have to, order them, give them a ranking, and then realize they're not all equal. We said this before, painting the garden and changing job and sending a CV out are not the same thing. One has a new career, one is 2 hours of paint. But the same hour, it needs to be, which one do you do first? The one that gives you $100,000 job for 20 years, give it a little bit of priority over painting the garden. Because if someone gets in before you, there was only one position and 100 CVs. You've got to rank it right, give it the time in the time you want. All things are not equal. So there's a little bit of, actually, I'm going to stop talking. But what we normally do is I read this little thing in front of me, which is one of these little day calendars that has a little motivational something. And I think this one's a good one. It might spark you into talking about something else or getting back to STEM, because we still haven't let you answer that one. Courage is doing what you're afraid to do. There can be no courage unless you're scared. What's any thoughts on that one?
Well, I think, I agree with that, because I also, one of my favorite quotes is from a guy called, I know his surname is Badgehart, Walter Badgehart. I think he was an editor, a writer of some sort in some century of some sort. But in any case, one of the things he says is the greatest pleasure in life is doing the things that people say you cannot do, and equally with what you've just said, if you're not prepared to face your fears, because there's nothing more scary than fear itself. And once you learn to conquer your own fears, courage becomes the next best thing for you, because you can face fear, you can tackle it, deal with your own inhibitions, and get over it. Get over yourself sometimes to be able to make space for other people. But then touching on what you said, which really struck a note in me about the SEP, someone else's problem. When people cannot have that brutal honesty that says, you know what, I put my hand up, that was on me. That was a self-inflicted situation. I could have dealt with it better. But people choose not to take responsibility, choose not to have accountability, and then it becomes a deflection. by turning the whole room into having to be about, I'm the victim here, and you guys are the bullies, or you're the bully over there. And the language just turns into a lawsuit before we even get any solicitors involved, because people do not want to take responsibility. And that SEP you're talking about repeats itself so many times. So back to the quote you've just said, that's what I would handle it with. Face your fears, deal with your own trash in your life, recycle it if you must. Bin what you need to recycle it and move on.
That's brilliant. Yeah. I think you're reflecting back now what like two scenarios that led myself and George to where we are. It took a long time for me. Again, I was my own worst enemy. It was an awful lot of it was self-inflicted because you didn't say no when the no was required, and then it was too late. You already owned it. You took the responsibility on. You were now responsible for delivering these outcomes when it was never yours to begin with. But when you take the ownership, now it's yours, and getting rid of it and giving it back is a much more difficult process. And you live with it and go, you won't catch me a second time, twice shy. That saying is out there. But then you've already opened the gate and you did it before, and now that's your thing, and it gets handed to you, and it gets difficult to say no because there's an evidence there. And that's why I found you nearly have to change jobs in order to break the cycle, and people don't change jobs willy-nilly. They're nearly thinking of their pension 3 years in and a 40-year distance of, oh my God, because security, unless you're going to are sort of securing yourself to be job hopping and career, driving. Most people step into something and get comfortable in it and go, I'm safe here. I get paid X. I'll get 5% more next year. I might get a little bit of a bonus. 5 years time from now, I'll save for that. They're already journeying in their life stream. They're a day in, 2 days in, and they're going, it's already over. 20 years from now, I'm retiring. It took me a long time to go, I can't think pension. Although the ads out there, and there's an awful lot of programs even on Netflix saying we should be planning for it, but if we can't fucking pay for the kids now, the food on the table now, then I cannot worry about 40 years from now not being able to pay for my cornflakes then. If I can address the now, then that will take care of itself. That is the problems I'm giving myself in the future, which may or may not exist. I need to deal with it now. I need to fix things now, get better now, educate myself more now, and that will give me a better potential something. But an awful lot of people get, and including myself, I got comfortable for 10 years. I 10 years in a job at a time. You're going, as an accountant, you're going, you're meant to be in and out in two, because you're not going to go up the scale. Otherwise, it's in, prove your point, move on. If you're staying, you're turning yourself into a silo of increment of, I have a job for life mentality. Jobs for life are gone. You need to be portfolio jobbing these days and figuring out which one will work best. The language of the TikToks are all saying passive income this and Bitcoin the other. But most of us don't have the money for the cornflakes. We can't be trading Bitcoin, and we're not buying houses on the side for the passive income. But if we want any of that, it's actually education. We've got to educate ourselves to say no to something and empower ourselves with new skill sets to open up other opportunities. And that is even easy to say. It's the hardest thing on the bloody planet to do.
I think that's where it's the self-education that becomes so important, because if you move from one job to another and you're saying, okay, I'm out of that environment that was toxic for me and that was causing me all kinds of problems. But if you go into the next environment and you suddenly find the same things are happening, if you can't look at yourself and say, maybe it's me not facing my fears that is the problem here, because if I can take the courage to face those fears, maybe I can change the situation, made it better for me here. And as long as if you can face up to that and try and change that, then you can start to create a new life for yourself, which I think is what we did, because I know that I had a couple of situations where people wanted me to do video productions, and then before you knew it, they were asking for 3 times the amount of money, worth of video production, but only wanted to give you what they'd originally said. They weren't prepared for the changes. And I actually got to a point where I said to a client, look, I know you're coming back and asking me for more work. That's going to cost more money. This is what the price is now. You've left it quite a long time. That was okay back then. And they thought I was the worst person in the world. And I had to say, well, look, I'm sorry, but your parameters have all changed. You've already had your money's worth of what you were looking for. I'm quite happy to, resend you that material. But anything over in that, you need to give me my worth in pay. Otherwise, there's no point in me doing it. Where's the incentive for me? I'm just working for nothing. And it's beginning to understand your worth and make sure that you see your worth in what you're doing and how you're moving forward. And if any of these other things become a distraction, then they're the things that you let go. And sometimes the worth is not a monetary. It's about understanding who you are as a person and knowing that you have certain values within you that quite often are beyond monetary, and you have a certain integrity about what you're trying to do, and putting those things forward so you're not being misused, which is what will happen in the industry. I know loads of people, different types of industry, in fact, who are finding themselves thinking they're getting something that would generate a little bit of extra income just to keep them going, and then finding they're working 4 or 5 times longer than what they really needed to have done because the client hasn't understood the job properly, and they've not given their place when they've tried to tell them what that job should really cost in the long run. And I think Garvin's had the same kind of problems. I'm sure you've had the same problems as well, Laurie.
Well, now that you've said it, worth, that's a complicated one, because I think, when you have children, right, and they're little, and you have that power when they're like 0 to 5 to instill worth into them, because it's how you treat them and how you value them. So they kind of learn this adopted behavior. And as they grow up and mature, eventually you kind of start getting whatever you've put in back, essentially. And then they become an adult.
There's a mini me. They're answering back.
And then they become an adult. And then you have to see, okay, this is the product of our handiwork. I laugh because there was a poster I came across. And this is the daughter-in-law says to the mother-in-law. There's this poster where you have that mother-in-law who keeps telling you what to do. So the daughter-in-law's response to the mother-in-law is, stop trying to tell me how to raise my kids. I'm living with your child, and we can see your handiwork at play right here. So I thought the irony of that, essentially. So worth is so crucial. And I think when people take more time to appreciate that, how you were raised, for example, George, and how you were raised, Garvin, and even myself, it's not the same. But when we come together, we can have a respectful, mutual appreciation of other people. And it's not about who's more important than the other, because we've already seen that history has not served either of us well.
Yeah,
I've either hated you or you've hated me by virtue of what ancestral history exists.
Never liked you. No, that's it. That's what my wife says every year on our anniversary. Never liked you.
Well, you know what, Garvin? You need to go and check your 80-20 rule there. You might need to ask your missus, which does she go for?
That's it. She said, I thought I was marrying an accountant. And I told her, I thought I was marrying a country girl with land frontage. So, I mean, we were both, the wool was pulled over both of our eyes. Yeah.
Well, I think you have to go back to terms and conditions here. What worth did you both put on each other?
Definitely. I didn't sign up for this, I'll tell you. I don't think she signed up either.
But the beauty is, you can laugh about this, and like what you're saying, there's one thing about having a fear, right? And I think there's another thing when you can laugh at yourself. I mean, I can put my hand up when it comes to a mouse. I mean, to anybody else, they think a mouse is harmless. But to me, I just have this vision. Blame TV when I was a child, that we always saw it was gremlins or something, and they were running and climbing up on you. So my biggest fear when it comes to a mouse, it's probably running away from me. But in my head, I've got this, this fear. It's going to run up me. So I'm petrified at the sight of it. It's so small, but it's menacing to me. And I really struggle to deal with that. And like we're talking about, it's dealing with that. When you know who you are, your fears, and you understand your worth and the worth of others. I think that spills in nicely into the pension you were talking about, which realistically, everybody thinks pension is the future. But after this conversation, if anybody doesn't know, pension is a reward for the time served now. That's how I would look at it. Because if you're not investing in now, what are you going to sit back and enjoy as the pension? Because the money will buy you some things. But if you've lost the relationships, lost your integrity, lost your self-worth, never became a better person, what is there to go and retire and be of service to who at that point? There's nothing to offer.
I like that, because we don't actually, the statistics usually bear out that, it might be you have to work. The great thing is if you're able to work as well as have to, it's what keeps you alive. Because I think the statistics are really saying most of people were working to live and living to work to get to this point in time, and they relaxed, and the cancers grew, and their purpose was gone, and there was nothing There was no colleagues anymore. No, there isn't this land of nod where everyone's playing golf in the sunshine. So there's no one. It's people. The work was the people, the friends, the interaction. The pain was having to move pieces of paper around and put numbers in spreadsheets, perhaps. But at the end of the day, work was not work. Work was going to work. It was the tea break. It was the water cooler. It was those business colleagues. It was even the office affairs. Possibly, if some of us were that lucky. But again, none of that could happen. That was the leaving, going out and interacting with something that gave you a purpose. And I don't want to stop work. Now, the work can be the passion. The work could be the house project. If we're able to work, we're out of bed, we're up and functioning, something is being worked on ourselves, our body, our health, our wealth. It's whatever that work word is. We use it in a one-minded way of going, work is the cost of my time to get the money to go do the other thing. If we can mix it up a bit, it's my reason of getting out of bed in the morning, and it empowers all things. And once I don't do it to the detriment of another, I have one of those functions that has to be carried out to give me meaning, to keep my body moving, instead of going to play the golf with my pretend friends that I'm not able to play golf anyway and have no interest in. So I want to work till the day I die, but not work myself to death.
Oh, I like that. I absolutely like that. And since we're in a pub, that's the notion of this conversation, right?
Yep.
I would propose that if there are, drink makers out there, that they make a drink called a life shake. And the life shake should be one that encompasses like the expert of drinkers, I suppose, a connoisseur of drinkers, where you can have this life shake, which is almost like the drink that you get served when you finally say, you know what, I've given my all, I've gotten everything I want to get out of life. When you go into the pub with the last sort of round with the fake friends that you might have acquired in this work of yours that you do. And have,
the barman.
Exactly.
I am your only friend, but the cost is.
And have this life shake that you just drink it all down, walk away, and just walk into your 80% that you've always had. Honestly, I think that's the way to go.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I also think that if you've invested in your life, especially with the people that you live with and the people that you supposedly love, then you want to spend more time with them. And part of the process, I think, our lives is that we've been earning money all our life, trying to make sure that we have what we need, bringing up the children. And there does actually come a point where you need to reconnect with the person that you began your life with, so that you can see your life through to the end, wherever that end is. In fact, one of the things that we're seeing is that because so many people just drop down dead very rapidly, you need to make sure, again, you value this time with them and don't lose those opportunities to have the conversations that you need, or to do things with them, to go out and enjoy what the world actually has to offer. I think those are important. And if you're working so hard that you're missing those opportunities when they do arise, then maybe you've got a little bit of something wrong, and that's maybe the little thing inside that you've got to try and rework to make sure you reconnect, especially when that person with you has given you some of the insights that have helped you get through some of the problems that you may have faced yourself. And also, because we're that idea of saying no, when sometimes you're struggling with the problems that you're encountering and you're not quite sure how to solve it, and they just give you that little bit of insight that tells you, do you know what, have you thought of this? And you're going to go, no, I didn't think I was allowed to do that. Why are you not allowed to do that? And they suddenly give you that help to face those fears that you may have actually had yourself. Having someone like that, I think, is important. And if you've got an opportunity to spend time with them, I want to spend more time with them. I think that's an important part.
Laurie, you've gone, see, my mind is very, very, I was going to say picturesque, that's the wrong word, visual, or I see in pictures. And you've just put me in the Last Chance Saloon. I'm back at the bar going, I'm not too sure if it was Tom Cruise or Rob Lowe in that film. It was a film Cocktail.
No, that was Tom Cruise.
Something like that.
Tom Cruise.
I'm now Tom Cruise.
Oh, you're saying I'm Paul Newman? Hang on a second.
No, look, I'm a better looking Tom Cruise, and I'm a bigger Tom Cruise.
Taller.
Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is a leprechaun anyway. I'm 6'6". I'm the gigantic Tom Cruise. But I'm at the writing down here. I want to be the cocktail maker at the bar of life. So you're back to your cocktails there. I want to mix it up a bit. I'm doing all that fancy chucking up in the air and putting it back down. It's not the Last Chance Saloon. It's the cocktail bar at the bar of life. You can go out there. We want to mix it up. We want to have our whiskey chasers. We don't want just a pint of Guinness, and it's Guinness all day long, because that imagery there is the little old man sitting in a corner, a pint of Guinness. Now, he knows what he likes. But if we want to, sort of chuck it up a few gears, it's the cocktail bars where you want to be. It's going to be entertaining over there. It's going to be mixed up a bit. You won't even know what the hell you're drinking. You're going to have a good time. The price is a little different. So therefore, but it's going to be, I think it's a different level of energy. That's the bar of life I want to be at. I want to be making and mixing up new cocktails. They're the experiences of life. Colour up your drinking. That's where I'm sort of at now. So I'm the barman. It's going to cost you. I don't know what your cocktail is yet, but we need to mix it up a bit, and we got to get those, that's what we want. What ingredients do we want? And we got to make sure it's stacked and stocked at the bar. And that we've got to influence that. And that's where we are, I think, now. We don't want to go to the little old man pub, but I don't. I want to go to the Tom Cruise cocktail bar.
That's a good bar to go to, because I think, let's face it, when you put in a lot of man hours, women hours to be who you want to be, people underestimate the cost. People don't ever stop and think about, we're sitting here having this podcast, but it's cost us something, maybe more than we would probably let you know, to be who we are right now. And all somebody can probably do is look at us and listen to us and think, yeah, okay, they're having a reasonably good time. But there are times in our life where it wasn't this great. There are times when things did not go to plan. There are times when you're enraged, furious, every negative emotion you can think of. We've experienced that. But I think the key factor for me, which is what I enjoy about the energy here, is it's the mindset. It has always been and will always be about the mindset. If you're always going to look at yourself and you're small, like the small Tom Cruise we're talking about, he's famous. But you know what they say? Dynamite comes.
He wears high heels. We know that. He wears heels. He puts other people on chairs and cuts the legs off and puts them down.
Well, maybe you need to watch. What is the other one? Shazam.
It's all perception. It's all perception.
Exactly. So I think, if anything, we have to appreciate that. There's a lot, and I think you have to earn your place to be the barman at that bar to serve those drinks, because you cannot serve from a plate.
Or bar person.
True. I'll probably take that. But I think you need to be somebody who has enough excess in your life to give away something. Because there's nothing worse than going to a bar that's understocked with the bar person on the other side who has nothing to offer. That just makes the whole experience not worth it. So I take you on that bar. Sign me up whenever you have it running.
We're going there. That's it. But no time soon, thank God.
Well, we're actually coming to the end of the show. Believe it or not, we've been going on for about an hour here, which is really, really good. So we've had a good lunchtime sort of cocktail being mixed in the pub of life, which I think is really, really good. We've had a great little conversation where we started talking initially about whether we should have plenty of tools in the toolbox and try not to be the tool instead. We've talked about lots of relationships, and the best way to solve a lot of problems that we found in life is to have a good discussion about it, and make sure you have time for those discussions, because you never know what little gems will come out of that to help you get through that day that you're having, even if it's a bad one. One of the things we've also talked about is the how it is important. Garvin was talking about pensions, but we realized that being in the now, sorting things out now, can quite often solve the problems that you're going to have in the future. And it's not necessarily about having a pensions, because as we've seen in this world, sometimes those pensions can disappear as quickly as they got there in the first place. The key thing is value the riches that you have. And quite often it's the other person that's in your life, or people, especially if you've got children and grandchildren, the likes of, as I do, and making sure that you make them feel special. And as we talked about earlier on, we've got to make sure that we don't have the in-laws thinking that they know better than us when they've given us something that's a bit up the left in the first place. Thankfully, I haven't been in that situation. I have a gem of a wife with me. She's the one that's probably sort of worried about what she's been given in her life. But thankfully, our sons have turned out all right. And I think that's because of her. So here we are at the end of this show. We've enjoyed the conversation. It has felt like a pub sort of chat. And hopefully we'll have another opportunity, Laurie, to talk to you again, because I think there's so much more that we could talk about and so much that Garvin and I can learn from you as well. I hope you've enjoyed coming on to this podcast this week. And thank you for that opportunity that you've had sharing with. Any last words you'd like to have just before we finish?
Well, I would encourage anybody who's out there, come into this very interesting space. I don't think there's anybody who couldn't fit in and contribute and learn and share. It's a thrilling experience being in a very interesting position where you have no idea what's coming your way. So this is like literally being on that famous movie 310 to Yamaha. So whatever time you'll find yourself, this is that train. So you best get on it, and you'll never know. You might get a cocktail from a bigger version of Tom Cruise. So yeah, worth it.
Well, very good. I like that. I'm reminded again of the restaurant at the end of the universe in Douglas Adams. I'm saying there's a cocktail bar just to the side. The barman there is my good old self. I'm sending my CV out now to be the barman at the cocktail bar at the restaurant at the end of the universe. That's where you'll find me. The bar tab is open. You better know what mix you want. St. Peter's Gate. You're having one more drink in the Last Chance Saloon. Know it before you go. I'll be there and I'll be served.
Thanks a lot. Bye for now.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications.